Welcome into the Locked On Knicks podcast. Gavin Shaw, Alex Wolf. Another night, another loss. This time to the defending champs, Milwaukee Bucks. But Alex, we're not going to start there.
Yeah, there's a lot of trade wins circling around the Knicks right now. Nothing super definitive, but we wanted to get into that first. Just talk about where this team is right now, sort of take an assessment of where they are, because we're now pretty close to the trade deadline. We're about a week and a half away. So we're going to do that first, take an assessment of the Knicks and just present some of the rumors that have been flying around. And then we'll talk about the Knicks game against the Bucks, why it felt like they were never quite in it despite being close. Why the rotations, once again, didn't make a ton of sense to us. And yet also there was some semblance of Tibbs making a little bit of sense. A bunch to get into as far as the game's concerned. But first, some trade rumors next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast. And we want to thank you for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day. Seriously, if this is the first thing you're doing on Saturday, maybe you have to question some life decisions, but we really appreciate it. And if you're already making that somewhat crazy decision to relive last night's game with us this morning, might as well do it on YouTube, because we are now on YouTube. If you're listening on audio, if you've never done it, check it out just one time. I promise you will. I think you'll enjoy the experience. Anyways, I'm Gavin Shaw, a play-by-play broadcaster. He is Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of the Strickland, the greatest Knicks website out there. And the New York Knicks fell last night to the Milwaukee Bucks, 123-108. The Bucks dropped 39 points on the Knicks in the first quarter. It looked like it was potentially going to be a blowout. Julius Randle sat for a long time in the second. The Knicks got back into the game. They played pretty well throughout the third, consistently within 3 to 1 to 5 points. And then in the fourth, Giannis started raining jumpers, looking like a hyper athletic Kevin Durant. And it was all over. The Milwaukee separated. The Knicks fell. And Alex, we were left with another one of those sort of like bitter taste games, but one I almost can't completely rip the Knicks for, because I think they played pretty hard and just got outclassed by a far superior team. And then again, there's no need to start with that, because in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. What does matter, will the Knicks make a big move before the trade deadline?
Yeah, and there's a lot flying around as far as that's concerned right now. And, we were talking about it before we started recording. It's sort of, there's something to be said for the fact that this game was almost like a barometer for, maybe the Knicks should be sellers at this point, because they did, by and large, I think, give it their best in this game. And yet they just couldn't hang with the Bucks. It always felt like they should have been about 15 points back. So let's get into a few of these rumors real quick. We'll lead off with this little news dump, because a lot of people have been talking about the Knicks suddenly, which makes me think maybe something is in the works here, or maybe multiple things are in the works. Zach Lowe on his podcast said one thing that he had said that I think is very encouraging is they said the Knicks are getting a lot of calls about Emmanuel Quickley. It seems like other teams think that the Knicks might be looking for a quick fix, no pun intended, and would be looking to get Quickley out of New York to give them some sort of shot in the arm, to try to salvage this season. And Lowe also said it seems like the Knicks are not super receptive to that at all, and seem pretty guarded with Quickley. Also, he said that they would probably deal Evan Fournier, but it would cost them. At this particular point, that does not surprise me. I know prior to the season, we said that his contract should always be movable with how he plays normally, but he has not played how he plays normally this year. And so it's now, I think, officially a negative value contract. So that makes sense. Brian Windhorst was saying that the Knicks could be open to trading the vets. He mentioned in part to free up playing time for Cam Reddish. I don't know if Reddish would necessarily be the number one priority, but, I think that they see the writing on the wall that maybe now's the time to, get rid of a few of these vets, with the schedule being as hard as it is coming up and their playoff chances dwindling in a much better East this year. Ian Begley, our buddy, says all the vets are on the table, basically. Even said, and this was the first time I had seen this, that even Julius Randle could be had for the right price, and that they have taken a couple calls on Julius Randle. And then a couple people in the Knicks sphere sort of alluded to that as well. Our buddy John Macri said something to that effect, though it was being kind of tight-lipped about it. And then our buddy CP at Knicks Fan TV says, hearing about 5 to 8 teams interested in Randle, including the Kings. Anything's possible between now and the offseason. Change of scenery might be best for both sides. So, that specifically mentions the Kings. Gavin, where do you stand with all these rumors? I mean, I think at this point, I wouldn't blame the Knicks if they were looking to potentially even trade Randle, who they just, made this commitment to in the offseason. But it wouldn't be the first time that we've seen a franchise do that, and a competent one at that. The same thing did happen with the Clippers with Blake Griffin, famously, where they offloaded Blake, and then not 2 seasons later, or I don't even think it was a full 2 seasons later, they end up with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George because they just kind of went a different direction and, decided that was the way they wanted to go instead of with Blake. It's not unheard of that a guy does get traded very shortly into a new extension or a new contract. It's just kind of unusual. But with how Randle's been playing and the general body language, the sort of Randle himself had a sort of, I wouldn't call it weird, but a very deep quote, yesterday prior to the game about how he wants to stay in New York. He wants to win here. He's still committed to the team and blah, blah, blah. It almost felt like damage control of if he's hearing these same things that he might be on the move at the trade deadline, that, he just kind of wants it out there. Like, hey, I'm not necessarily asking for this, but it's just happening. So I don't know. Where do you stand with all these rumors right now?
Yeah, so I think they're all worth addressing. I think the Randle element is the most fascinating because all the other guys like Burks, Kemba, to a lesser extent Fournier, because he's obviously someone who, if he stays here in New York, will be the pivotal part of the rotation next 3 years. But Kemba and Burks, not really going to be a huge part of the Knicks' future, right? Randle was supposed to be the Knicks' entire future. And this is a dramatic shift, even though we're 50 games in, and obviously it's been a pretty deplorable 50 games for Randle. This is the guy who made second-team All-NBA, who got MVP votes a year ago, who defined like this entirely revamped culture and was the hero of New York, like maybe was the hero of New York sports, even beyond the Knicks. And the idea that, again, 50 games into a season later, you're going to move off that guy. I don't know. It's interesting to me. And unlike you, I mean, and like everyone sending out these reports, like I find it very, very plausible that they could do that. I don't even know if it would be the wrong move, because I think the Clippers example you used is a perfect one. The whole point of signing Julius Randle to a fantastic contract, or at least fantastic relative to how he played last season, now it looks like a fair or maybe even a little bit of a generous contract, is that it is eminently movable, and the Knicks maybe will not, definitively will not get back the return they would have got trading last year's version of Randle, but they could still get back a good player. Like Harrison Barnes is like a name that's been thrown around a little bit. I mean, some people even have gone to like loftier territory than that. Or maybe it's just a package of picks that the Knicks get back. But the whole point of signing Randle to that contract is you can get assets back for him. And in the past, I think people would have pushed back and say, all right, but that's how you destroy your reputation around the league that you just spent a year building up, like turning Julius Randle from like a pumpkin into a carriage. The whole point of that was, hey, like other people are going to want to come and be a part of that. And people love like the loyalty that the Knicks showed and bring him back. But then to your Clippers analogy, none of that really matters, because ultimately like stars want to go where they want to go. And if it's a star that's good enough to make a substantial difference in the Knicks championship aspirations down the road, it's not going to be someone who has a really significant concern about getting traded. Like we also saw reports from Ian Begley that there's people around the NBA think it's inevitable that Donovan Mitchell ends up in New York. He has 4 years left on his contract. So I personally, I don't really think that's going to happen. But to that point, Donovan Mitchell, I don't think would really care at all that Julius Randle was traded. He said, I am not Julius Randle. I'm Donovan Mitchell. That's not going to happen to me. So I think it's an interesting. It's fascinating to me that this conversation is out there. I like you. I think it's plausible that it actually happens. I just think if I were the Knicks front office, I would think long and hard about what the follow-up moves are to that this offseason, because you might have a completely different roster next year. And theoretically, you might have one down the road that Randle fits a whole lot better in. I guess the counter argument to that is if Tibbs is forever going to insist on playing a rim protecting center that is not in the Miles Turner mold, and the Knicks can't get a Miles Turner because the centers who protect the rim and shoot threes don't grow on trees. Randle will just never really fit in what Tibbs wants to do, because you're going to need a shooter at the 4 spot, and apparently he's no longer a shooter.
Yeah, and I got another comment on that, but I think we should probably take our first break real quick. Gavin, did you want to let everybody know about betonline.ag? Maybe they're going to list odds for the Knicks staying on the team soon.
Oh, wow. I think I could put some money down on that. But, Alex, there might be less football being played, but BetOnline has way more stuff to bet on this playoff season. From scored totals, player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline is the number one spot for all things NFL betting in 2022. And with the new year comes a new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to get started. And it's not just football. BetOnline's basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC odds coverage is the best in the business, from sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. BetOnline is your number one online wagering destination. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports and play your favorite games. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Alex, I just went on my whole Randle rant. What is your reaction to this seeming increasingly realistic, at the very least, that the Knicks will have conversations about Julius Randle?
Well, I wanted to sort of address your thing that you said about, someone like a Donovan Mitchell, right? Like, and I mean, I'm not going to start getting myself all hyped up about a potential for a Donovan Mitchell or something, because, Leon Rose had a lot of clients. Obviously, all of them are at some point or another going to get linked to the Knicks, but like most of them are in pretty good situations. Like, Mitchell with the Jazz, really not too shabby, and, obviously Devin Booker with the Suns, fantastic situation. Joel Embiid with the Sixers, playing like an MVP right now. I mean, Leon Rose represented really good players and, got them in really good situations before he eventually took the Knicks job. So kudos to Leon, I guess. But unfortunate for the Knicks that he didn't set up any of these guys in terrible crap destinations with nobody around them, I guess.
Dolan should have given one more year as a mole at CAA and just gotten a lot of these guys over and then taken the job.
Then you could have, yeah, right. Hey, Donovan, sign a contract with the Timberwolves, and then we'll get you on the Knicks in a couple years or whatever. At any rate, though, like what stood out to me with what you said was, a guy like Donovan Mitchell potentially saying, like, I don't really care if Julius Randle is there, and I feel like that might be one of the primary motivators to the Knicks making this sort of trade. Is that I think one thing that has shown up that has not been good for Randle this year is this sort of, we've said this since last year and whatever, like ideally you would want Julius Randle to be like your 1B star, or even your third best player if you could really swing it, for like a actual championship caliber team. And I think that what we've seen this year is that Randle, when he hasn't been the focal point of this team, just doesn't seem to know what to do with himself. And I feel like a lot of stars, like 1A stars, that would be coming here and wanting to be the guy, would look at that and say, like, I don't know if that's the guy that I want to be my running mate, because he doesn't seem to want to play in a style that's anything other than him handling the ball, him setting everybody up, and him being like the focal point of the offense. It almost, to a degree, and I hate to draw this comparison, but it's the first one that comes to mind for me. It's almost like how things used to run in OKC with Westbrook, like where Westbrook had to be the alpha and the omega, the guy getting every point, every rebound, every assist. And, I don't think it's quite that crazy with Randle, but I do think that there's maybe something to be said for, like, that's how Randle seems to view his role. And now that he's in a situation where the Knicks are maybe asking him, like, hey, can RJ run some more plays, or can, Kemba, bring the ball down half the time or whatever. It seems like those plays are the ones where we end up looking and saying, wow, Julius Randle looks kind of checked out. And then the defensive sequences after those are where we say, wow, like, look at how nonsensically, lackadaisical he's being as far as, guarding his man and sticking with them, because he just seems completely out of the game when he's not the focal point of it. So maybe that's running through the Knicks, brass's minds too, where they're saying, man, we thought this could be one way, but it's another way. So if we get an opportunity to change it right now, why not just get the ball rolling right now and, figure out where we're at going forward, with RJ as sort of the primary cog in the team, which is sort of how things have been going lately anyway, with the fact that RJ has been, by and large, like taking the most shots. He's been their leading scorer like this whole month. He's had a fantastic month, and it looks like he's really turning a corner. So maybe the Knicks now just kind of say, all right, well, rest of the season is mostly out the window anyway. So let's just kind of install RJ as the primary guy on this team and trade Randle for maybe someone that can operate better as a secondary guy and see where things go. I don't know, though. That's kind of where I'm at the moment.
I'd like a Julius Randle biopic one day titled "Nonsensically Lackadaisical: The Julius Randle Story." I think that would be good. Maybe
I've got
chronicling his Kings years.
Yeah, that'll be Kings or wherever else. I mean, I don't know if there's 5 to 8 teams calling. I mean, that's the thing is, I could see him being still looking valuable to some other teams, and maybe some other teams too think we can get more of the New Orleans version out of him than the Knicks version, because in New Orleans, he was a pick and roll threat, a pick and pop threat, like he did all these things, and maybe he just needs an environment where there's a defined like alpha dog that he would sort of be forced to, play under, play off of. Yeah. Like that he would respect enough to be like, okay, you run the show and I'll be the secondary guy. Yeah. I don't know if that's it. If it's just like, he's kind of like thrown off by like, well, Kemba's kind of washed up. Like, why do I have to, play off of him on some plays? And like RJ is like 5 years younger than me or 6 years younger than me. Why do I have to play off of him? Sort of thing.
The thing is in defense of Julius, like he's not wrong about either of those things. Like the Knicks don't have another guy who should be the number one option. So that's where, like, if I'm inclined to defend his season, it's that I think Tibbs and I think Julius both realize like the best version of the Knicks last year for a reason was everything running through Julius, and Julius shooting like he did last year, like justifies that. It's just that when he doesn't, like, it looks horrific. But the Knicks don't really have an alternative. So I do think there's a world where he can find a lot of success on another team. Like we say it all the time, like he has all the skill necessary to be pretty ideal as like a third option on almost any team. Again, ideally would be playing with 4 shooters and like a center that could shoot. But even sans that, like on the right roster, I think he can make it work, especially if you give him time with like bench units that are more shooting heavy, like maybe some lineups where he's a small ball center. And obviously there are other coaches that aren't Tibbs that would be more inclined to do that a little bit more often. It's interesting. I do think there's a world where he looks really, really good in another situation, but we've talked so much about Randle. Let's quickly mention the other guys. You noted Fournier. Burks is someone, if you guys haven't been paying attention, we're doing a lot of episodes trying to trade him. I think with Burks, the fascinating question will be, has he played poorly enough the last month that he is no longer worth a late first round pick? I think there are smarter teams out there that will recognize that for the first month or month and a half of the season, when he was playing like exceptionally well and like one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA, he got to play with Derrick Rose. And if you can provide him with a similar situation where he's not completely overtaxed, then I still think he can be someone who, like, this is what we always say with Burks, like just doesn't really take anything off the table. One thing to note with him that Fred Katz pointed out, he's shooting, I think the stat was, this sounds insane, but 36% at the rim this year, like horrifically bad. So that is something that I'm sure most contenders will be wary of and maybe could diminish his value a little bit. And Kemba, I still think on the right team has value as sort of a 6-man type guy. That being said, the Knicks will not be getting a first round pick for Kemba Walker. I think if they can get a second round pick for him, they would be doing pretty well. But Alex, I'll just throw this to you to wrap up this segment. Obviously, we're gonna have more discussion on this, but at the end of the day, if I gave you like an over under of 1.5 players on the Knicks that get traded at the deadline, which direction would you go on that?
I think presently I'm trending towards over. I think where there's smoke, there's fire. And I don't, this Knicks front office is so tight-lipped that I don't feel like the Knicks would be entering everybody's mouths all at once unless it was coming from the Knicks. You know what I mean? Like, so I almost think this is calculated on their part, like sort of getting people ready for the possibility that this team might be completely different after the deadline. Because that by and large, this team has been like Fort Knox with leaks. They don't let anything out. They are, always, ahead of everything, and certain moves have taken, people in the media completely by surprise. Like the Derrick Rose trade, very few people had until like the moment it was done. And there's been a few things that have had some seeds planted, like the Fournier, move, for example, people were pretty on top of, but then the Kemba thing comes completely out of nowhere, for example, and nobody even knew that was really in the works until literally like Woj tweeted it that morning. So this team works in mysterious ways, and I think that the fact that we are talking about, hey, we're hearing from Zach Lowe, Brian Windhorst, Ian Begley, even some of our Knicks centric contemporaries like CP and Macri, that the Knicks are getting busy right now with working the trade phone lines. I don't think that's accidental. I think that's intentional. I think that they're starting to get this stuff out there and maybe using this as a way to sort of let the rest of the league know, like, hey, if you haven't called us, give us a call, because everybody's on the table at this point, other than maybe like RJ or IQ or, like some of the guys that we value the most. So we'll see. But as of right now, yeah, I'm on the over on that. But what do you think as far as a number?
Yeah, I'm with you too, because I think, it could end up being like another guy on the margins, but I think something will really surprise us. And I know that that's a very general prediction, but I think there's going to be like some weird left turn, to your point, because the upfront office is so covert, and also just it's obvious that there needs to be a real significant shakeup here, and what is currently happening is not working. And ironically, the best way to rebuild last season's energy might be to really, really suck and just play, again, a Deuce McBride 30-something minutes a game, a Quentin Grimes certainly 30-something minutes a game. And in doing so, not as effectively as last year, because the team just won't be as good, but recapture some of that same energy of a team that just scraps and plays hard and gets some unexpected wins. But Alex, if the Knicks want to play harder throughout the season, maybe downing some Built Bars wouldn't be the worst idea in the world.
Yeah, it is the new year, and that means New Year's resolutions. Maybe the Knicks are resolving to work harder in the new year. It certainly hasn't really come to fruition yet. But if your New Year's resolution is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar. Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good you'll want to eat it, unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky or waxy or taste like a chemical spill. You want to eat healthy, but it just gets so boring. By like week 3, you might be thinking, this just isn't worth it. Where's the chocolate? Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and most Built Bars contain just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 4 grams of net carbs, compared to 17 grams of protein. That is, you're not going to find that in any candy bar, where most of those have 240 calories, as much as 30 grams of sugar, dozens of net carbs, and of course, lots of fat from all that like caramel and nougat and everything else. You're not going to get any of that from Built Bars. And so if you want to get some Built Bars for yourself, go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and you will get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, Gavin, we have put it off long enough. I suppose we have to talk about this game from last night. The Knicks hit national TV again. Really weird game. It was like a West Coast start time for a Midwest game. Good for the people in Milwaukee. They got to have a nighttime game. And honestly, okay, first off, this is totally off, separate from anything. But props to their arena crew. Like, are the Bucks cool? Like, their arena sounds like a party the whole time. Like, big props to whoever does like their music and just like in arena sound, because that place sounded awesome like the whole night. And I mean, I guess that's that championship afterglow and everything too, but that place seems so fun. Like I would have loved to have been in there as a neutral observer, not as a Knicks fan. But the Knicks, of course, lose 123-108 to Milwaukee. You alluded to it in the open of the show, Gavin, but they sort of kept things close for a while. They were only down, as little as like a handful of points for most of the game, like all the way through like the third quarter. Then Giannis turns it on in the fourth, just absolutely torches them. And Milwaukee just sort of reminded the Knicks, like, by the way, we're better than you. And we're a championship contender and you guys are a playoff at this point pretender. And that's it. And we're just going to beat you. And I really did think that, other than maybe Julius Randle, which I hate to make this kind of like the crap on Julius Randle pod, but I didn't think that he put forth a really great effort in this game. I thought the rest of the Knicks really looked like they were trying, and that's probably the most concerning thing, is that they really tried their best, and ultimately they got squashed by the Bucks, which is a team that they managed to beat, a couple times last year. I believe they beat them earlier this year too.
Yeah,
earlier this
comeback,
season.
that amazing comeback.
Yeah, earlier this
season. Like a
season.
different year, right? Yeah.
I was gonna say it feels like a different, eternity from now. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how you feel about this game, but even when they were down by 3, I just never felt like they were going to win this game, because it always felt like the Bucks were just that closing run away from winning this thing.
Yeah, I'm with you. It was depressing because they played pretty well and just could not compete down the stretch. I thought Evan Fournier, I'm going to give him props, 25, 7, and 3. I thought he was pretty awesome in this game. Like, I think it's telling that he finished the game with 5 fouls, and that like he played his ass off defensively, at least as far as I was watching. Like, had a couple of like really nice deflections, had a nice block at one point, hit a big 3 that made it 113-108, and you felt for a second that the Knicks were back in it. And then that obviously fell away as like Giannis was inexplicably just raining jumpers. I made the Kevin Durant analogy, looking like prime Dirk Nowitzki at points while also just dunking on people. But I thought Fournier played ridiculously hard. He had like his shot of the season. He had like this sick like blow by of Grayson Allen into like a 180-and-1 circus layup. That was really nice. I thought Kemba Walker was not great. I mean, just took a lot of deep threes and missed all 4 of them, but did finish with 8 points, 7 assists, 5 boards. Like, I think he played hard. I think it was very telling that the Knicks' best run of this game was in the second quarter, when Randle sat until the 4-minute mark, and Kemba and Fournier were allowed some time to just roll with like Obi, Grimes, and Mitch, I believe was the lineup. And Kemba hit Mitch on this really nice pick and roll lob. And it just sort of gave you this vision of like this other team where, like, if Randle had just like missed like 10 games at some point this year, what would the Knicks have looked like? Just catering their offense around Kemba Walker, running spread pick and roll, giving him 3 shooters, letting Mitch run to the rim. And to me, when I was so excited about this team in the preseason, I was saying, frankly, crazy stuff like that the Knicks could have a top 5 offense. My vision of it was, well, Julius is going to be a 40% 3-point shooter again, and it's going to be Kemba running a spread pick and roll, except with like this super elite like rim attacker and Julius getting to go against the slanted defense. And when Julius's shot fell off, we never really got that vision for the team. But we got a little bit of a glimpse of it tonight with Tibbs altering his rotation and giving some time to that group. So I thought that was sort of cool to see. Alex, I'll let you get into it, but I thought Quentin Grimes was ultimately the shining light in a positive direction in this game, in that second quarter where he just took over the game, raining threes, hitting a floater, looking all around like maybe the most promising young prospect on this team, at least for 5-6 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not even just a 5-6 minutes thing. I mean, he's just consistently stringing together fantastic games at this point. Like, I think we've reached a point where, I mean, and I would imagine the Knicks probably feel this way too, but, with all the trade deadline talk, he's probably worked himself into, if I was going to say 2 guys are basically untouchable on the Knicks right now, it would probably be RJ and Grimes, because at least, especially if they're going to keep going with Tibbs, as the head coach for the foreseeable future, if his job isn't in jeopardy so much as the players being more in jeopardy for getting moved, then, I think RJ and Grimes take, they're like Tibbs's favorites with good reason, and, are guys that this front office has invested in, even if RJ wasn't technically drafted by them. I love this game. Like you said, the one thing that really stood out to me, more so than the threes, which, I mean, his 3-point shot is just still, it's mesmerizingly good. I mean, he got some shots off in this game, and not all of them went in, and some of them missed. And, he's still working through the kinks of, I think still getting his shot off over the course of a whole game and being able to keep that same lift on his shot and everything, because he's got a pretty high jump in his shot and stuff like that. So I think, some of it is like a fatigue thing over time. And, you see that with guys, especially rookies, and he's at that rookie wall point of the season, because he didn't play that much to start the year. Now he's had, I would say, consistent playing time in close to about 30 games. And, we always talk about this every single year with Knicks rookies, that's when they hit the rookie wall a little bit. Clearly he's not hitting it with his defense, but I do wonder if maybe he's kind of working his way through the endurance needed to put up, 7, 8, 9 3-point shots in a game as an NBA player, night in, night out. That takes a lot of energy to generate those shots and have them go exactly how you want them to go on every single attempt, especially when you're doing it with closing pressure and stuff. But his jumper is just gorgeous. When he gets it off, and even if it's not going in, I still pretty much always feel like it's going to go in, just because of how consistent his motion is and everything. But the thing that stood out to me was the little floater in traffic. Kind of just took it into the paint and threw up a little floater. And those are the little things, if he shows the ability to like run a quick pick and roll with like a Mitchell Robinson, or, get into the lane and make a quick floater, we're starting to talk about a guy who's, they're different players, but those are sort of some of the skills that made us think with Emmanuel Quickley last year, like, oh, this kid could be really special because he could do other things than just shoot a 3-ball and play decent defense. In Grimes' case, he plays like phenomenal, arguably best on the team defense. Definitely, I would say at this particular moment, the best wing defender on the team, without a doubt, and the best point of attack defender on the team, without a doubt. Does that, plus can make threes at a high clip, around 40%. Plus, if he starts being able to put the ball on the floor a little bit, I think I've made this analogy before, but it's almost like then talking about, what we were talking about with Evan Fournier, where it's like, oh, this guy is like Reggie Bullock plus, like, except for with Grimes, it would actually be the case with the defense. But on offense, being able to put it on the floor, being able to have something in your bag other than just a 3-point shot is so important. And you talk about it a lot, but that's where some of his old like point guard instincts really show through.
Yeah, his explosive. We didn't really get to see it in this game, but his explosiveness, attacking closeouts, is probably the single most pleasant surprise for me, on top of his passing on those types of plays. Another guy I wanted to note, RJ Barrett, pretty inefficient, 6 for 20 from the field. That's 30%, not great. Made up for it a little bit, going 3 for 8 from 3, 8 for 10 from the foul line. Was certainly a sight for sore eyes. I thought he made some really good plays in this game. I thought he made some really crappy plays in this game. One that stood out was late in the third during the Knicks comeback run. One of his best passes of the year, where he blew by Dante DiVincenzo. Giannis came over and helped, and RJ just sort of like looped it around Giannis's back to Nerlens for a dunk. And it brought a smile to my face, because I was like, oh, that's a Steve Nash pass. That's something he got from his godfather. So that was like a nice little moment in this game. Outside of that, I think it's sort of typical of RJ, right? Because we always talk about how like Ben Simmons, thank God, not an issue anymore, for at least from RJ's perspective, would just torture him on defense. I feel like the Bucks, with just all their like long defenders, that was very much true for RJ too, and that's why he was by and large so efficient. Again, give him credit for continuing to attack, but this is sort of what the Knicks have to buckle up for. If they are going to trade a Julius Randle, you're going to have a lot of 6 for 20 nights from RJ Barrett, because he's not quite ready to be that number one guy, especially against some of the more fearsome defenses in the NBA. I thought Emmanuel Quickley had similar issues to RJ, where Milwaukee was just very, very comfortable switching whoever on him, and they presented so much size, or in the case of Drew Holiday, so much physicality and savviness, that IQ couldn't really do anything attacking those guys. And where IQ shined the last few weeks isn't necessarily beating people one-on-one and scoring or hitting step-back threes. It's drawing just enough of a help defender that he can throw some ridiculous pass and have all these games where he's getting 7 or 8 assists in only 20 minutes out there. Tonight against this Bucks team, or last night against this Bucks team, that was not the case. I didn't think he had a particularly good game.
Yeah, I wasn't particularly wowed by Quickley either. Also, Alec Burks, despite putting up a statistically pretty good game, that was surprising to me. This was a night where I think plus minus kind of told the story. -21 for him, worst on the team. I wasn't I don't know. His minutes didn't strike me. I didn't feel like he was making a huge impact out there, despite 10 points, 3 boards, 2 assists in 18 minutes. It just was kind of a meh night for Burks. I guess the last guy that I'll just briefly talk about, just in the interest of time, is just Randle. And 9 points, 4-9 shooting, 11 boards, 3 assists, 4 turnovers. It was a listless game for him. And if the Knicks are indeed looking to trade him, it's games like these are the reason why. He didn't look like he was interested in playing basketball tonight or last night. He didn't score his first points until almost the end of the second quarter. He got benched for a large period of the second quarter as a result of not really looking like he wanted to be there, and yet still managed to find his way to 37 minutes and was not super effective in those minutes. Again, if the Knicks are looking to trade him, I think games like this are why, because I didn't think that he brought it tonight. And unfortunately, that's been the case more often than not this season. And it's sad to see, it's sad to acknowledge, but that's just kind of the reality for the Knicks at this point with him.
Yeah, it was weird. And this is almost sadder for me than if he just really didn't give a crap. I kind of think he wanted to play hard and he wanted to make an impact, but he's so lost right now and so doesn't know what his role is and so doesn't know where he's effective or how he's effective. Like to me, like almost the saddest play of the game for him was a shot that went in. It was his, I can't remember if it was his first point or maybe he got this in the third quarter, but it was that turnaround jumper that he hit where it bounced off the rim 2 times. And just flashing back to last year where he's hitting that shot maybe 4 times a game or some iteration of that shot 4 times a game. And he looks so unsure of himself and the shot just barely went down. And to me, that sort of epitomized like last year Julius versus this year Julius, that he didn't even look like he was comfortable taking it. And last year, he didn't even think it was going to go in. He knew it was going to go in every time he took that shot. And I think he's a guy that just is, again, like, I don't know if it's a change of scenery. I don't know if he'd benefit from, if the Knicks keep him, Tibbs just like bench him a couple of games and just him watching. Like, I don't know if he's a guy who would benefit from like getting pulled early and then getting to play with the second unit. I feel weird even belaboring the point because we spent 20 something minutes of this episode talking about Julius Randle, but lost is the word I would use. Less so even than him not trying right now.
Yep, I'm with you. And I think, unfortunately, that's the note to end this podcast on. So thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week. Still, keeping up with all this trade deadline scuttlebutt. So we'll be, covering all that, plus all the Knicks games next week. Try to get some cool guests on for you guys again, particularly from other teams to get some perspectives like we have been lately. So keep your ears out for that. Keep your eyes out on YouTube if you could. And maybe throw us a subscription there. And we'll talk to you all next time. Peace out, everybody. Talk to you all.